Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're launching straight in, really exploring this idea of pithy communication.
Right.
You shared some, well, really compelling sources about what it means to be pithy, why it's effective.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
Sounds good.
Our mission, really, is to grasp this idea,
Hmm.
expressing a lot with, just a little. Its roots, its power.
Absolutely. And the materials you sent over, they give us a fantastic starting point.
Yeah.
We've got a bit from a TED Talk on conciseness, the word's history, actual examples,
Okay.
a comparison with similar words, tips on writing pithily, definitions, and even how it applies in leadership.
So quite a rest.
A really good range. And for you, our listener who wants to get knowledge quickly, but also thoroughly, we'll pull all this together into hopefully clear, memorable insights. Those kind of aha moments,
Right, without getting bogged down.
Exactly. No information overload.
Okay, let's dive in. The core of it. What does pithy actually mean?
Well, dictionary.com defines it basically as brief, forceful, and meaningful in expression.
Forceful and meaningful.
Okay.
Yeah, and full of vigor, substance, or meaning, terse, forcible.
Yes.
It's really about getting maximum impact with minimum words.
Right. Maximum impact. And where does a word like that even come from? Feels like it has some history.
It really does. You're right. It traces back to Old English to the word pitha.
Pitha.
Yeah, which meant something like the essential or central part of something, like the very heart of an idea. You know?
Okay. The core.
Exactly. And that became the noun pith, which we still use it for that soft stuff inside plant stems.
Right. The white stuff in an orange peel.
That's one kind, yeah.
Mm.
But metaphorically, pith came to mean substance, the real essence. It sort of speaks to wanting to get to that core meaning, doesn't it?
Yeah, like stripping away all the fluff.
Precisely. And then you add the suffix way, which etymon tells us just means full of or characterized by.
Simple enough.
So by the 1560s or so, pithy literally just meant full of pith.
Okay.
But interestingly, it had already picked up figurative meanings much earlier, like strong, vigorous back in the early 14th century.
Wow, that far back.
Yeah, and full of substance or significance by the 1520s. So this idea of impactful brevity, it's been around a long, long time.
That's fascinating. Now, it's not just about being short, is it? There's something more.
Right.
Tina Dubinsky, she uses this great image, the pith of an orange, to describe pithy writing. What's the essence there?
It's a really good analogy. She points out that, like orange pith is concise, it's thin, right?
Yeah.
But it's also meaningful, has flavor, maybe some bitterness, substance, and it can have a bit of a tangy, curt quality.
Okay.
Pithy writing is similar. Brief, yes, but full of significance, and sometimes it has that sharp, direct edge. As Word Panda puts it, pithy remarks deliver a lot in just a few words.
Concise, but with a punch of meaning. Got it.
But, okay, we have so many words for being brief. You mentioned a Reddit discussion that tried to separate pithy from similar words, like concise, terse, laconic, succinct, abridge. What are the key differences we should keep in mind?
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting, those nuances. They all relate to brevity, but they're not quite the same.
Right.
The Reddit chat suggested concise and succinct are pretty close. Both mean using few words clearly. Maybe concise allows for a bit more detail sometimes.
Okay, possibly.
Terse, though, that often implies a brevity that might feel a bit abrupt, like you're maybe holding something back, usually about speaking.
Bit clipped.
Yeah, it could be. Then laconic.
Yeah.
That describes a person's style, someone who habitually uses very few words. It comes from Laconia in ancient Greece.
The Spartans.
Yeah.
Famous for their short answers.
Exactly. No nonsense. So laconic is almost like a personality trait reflected in communication.
Interesting distinction.
And abridge is different again. It's specifically a verb. It means you're shortening something that was already longer, usually like a text.
Okay, so abridge is about the action after something's created, not the initial quality.
Right.
So where does pithy really stand out from that group? The Reddit thread hinted it's more than just short and clear.
Precisely. The key thing with pithy is that it adds this element of, cleverness or significant meaning alongside the brevity.
Okay.
It's more like a clever saying, a bon mot, or a really insightful short remark. A phrase that, even though it's short, carries real weight and understanding. It's not just a compressed summary.
So short, clear, and meaningful or clever.
That's the heart of it.
The Merriam-Webster thesaurus also dives into these subtleties.
Yeah.
What did you take from their comparison?
They really underline that pithy brings a richness of meaning or substance that you don't automatically get with just, say, succinct or terse.
All right.
While concise is about cutting the fluff, and laconic can even feel a bit rude or mysterious because it's so brief, and succinct is about maximum compression, and summary is just the main points. Pithy has that extra punch, that impactful meaning packed inside its small form. It doesn't just state things briefly. It resonates.
That really clarifies
Yeah.
it. Okay, so now we've got a much sharper picture of what pithy means and how it's different. Why is this style so effective? What's its power?
Well, Word Pandit points out its historical value. In classical times, rhetoric, literature, being able to say profound things concisely was seen as a real skill.
Right, think of proverbs or famous quotes.
Exactly. Those little gems of wisdom that stick with you for ages. They're short, but they hold so much.
They really do.
And that power hasn't really faded. Word Pandit also stresses how relevant it is today. Social media, ads, public speaking, journalism, branding, even leadership. In all these areas, being brief but impactful is, well, essential for grabbing attention, persuading people, keeping them engaged. It links back to that TED Talk idea, too, the power of keeping things pithy.
It's really about cutting through all the noise, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We're just bombarded with information constantly. So messages that are short and meaningful, they're the ones that actually break through and stick.
Precisely. And this applies very directly in areas like leadership. That article you found on pithy priorities, that was fascinating. Why are they seen as so much better than long lists?
Yeah, that really struck me. The argument is basically that when leaders set just a few short, memorable priorities, they're way more effective than having these massive, sprawling lists of goals or competencies. It just makes sense. Intuitively, people can actually remember and act on a few clear things.
And the article explains why, right? It's easier to remember, easier to prioritize day to day, easier to actually apply.
Yeah.
And that clarity leads to better focus, more energy on what matters, and, well, ultimately better results and more engaged employees.
Compared to those huge lists that just feel overwhelming.
Right. The article mentions that. Exhaustive lists can cause cognitive overload. People can't process it all, let alone remember it. And if you can't remember it, how can you prioritize? It can actually stifle innovation because people are just confused.
It's like being handed a giant instruction manual and told it's all vital. You wouldn't know where to start.
Exactly.
And the Microsoft example in that piece was perfect. Reframing their leadership stuff into just 6 words, that's about as pithy as it gets.
It really is a powerful illustration of making priorities memorable. And the article also connects effective, often pithy leadership principles to better engagement, positive culture, more innovation, overall success.
So, okay, we get the value, we see why it's powerful, but how do we actually do it? How do we become more pithy communicators? That blog post by Tina Jabinski had some practical tips, didn't it? Seems like they'd apply beyond just blogs.
Oh, definitely. Her advice really boils down to 2 main things. First, strip away the unnecessary words, and second, prune the irrelevant material.
Okay, stripping and pruning.
Yeah. For stripping away words, she suggests things like using white space, bullet points, good transition words, keeping paragraphs short, using strong verbs, simplifying descriptions, maybe limiting adjectives, basically cutting the verbal clutter.
Makes sense. Less is more.
Exactly. And for the second part, pruning needless material.
Yeah.
That's about getting straight to the point.
Right.
Plan your communication clearly, provide context, but stick to the essentials, use headings, stay focused on the main topic, don't wander off.
Okay.
She even suggests, thinking like a journalist, craft a strong opening summary that grabs attention, gets the key info out fast, and is concise itself.
Be deliberate with every word. Choose carefully.
That's the idea.
Okay, so to bring it all together, let's look at how the word picky is actually used. Merriam-Webster and Dictionary.com had several example sentences. What do those show us?
They're really useful for seeing the range. You see pithy describing a film review, meaning brief but insightful.
Okay.
Or a book filled with pithy sayings, short, meaningful statements about life.
Like aphorisms.
Yeah, exactly. Even slogans, a short, pithy slogan can be very effective. It applies to analysis, political catchphrases, those sound bites designed to stick.
It's online stuff like tweets, obviously.
Yeah.
Direct quotes. And interestingly, one example described ale as not all pithy, suggesting it lacked like a sharp, essential quality in its taste.
So it applies beyond just words.
It seems so.
Yeah.
But mostly it highlights how broadly we use it for concise and meaningful expression in all sorts of communication.
So, wrapping this up, For you, our listener, what's the main takeaway here?
I think ultimately being pithy is about much more than just being short.
Right.
It's about intentionally packing real substance, real significance into just a few carefully chosen words.
Yeah.
So whether you're trying to, quickly grasp a complex topic yourself or craft a message that really lands with people or even lead a team more effectively, developing that ability to be pithy is, well, it's a really valuable skill. It's about cutting through all the noise and getting right to the heart of things in a way that actually sticks.
Well said. And building on that, maybe here's a final thought to mull over.
Think about the last bit of information you took in, or maybe a message you sent today. Could it have been more pithy?
Good question.
What were the absolute must-have elements? And what could maybe have been trimmed to make it, I don't know, more impactful, more memorable?
Yeah.
In this world just saturated with information, this idea of less is often more in how we communicate.
Yeah.
It's definitely something powerful to keep considering, isn't it?
It really is. Something to practice.